Picture yourself standing in a canyon, shouting into the distance. A moment later, you hear it back, but it's not quite you anymore. It's been shaped by everything it bounced off of. That's how most of us live. We think we're following our own voice, our own dreams, our truth, but we're actually following echoes. Other people's expectations, cultural scripts, inherited beliefs. Today we're talking about how to tell the difference between echoes and your true voice, why it matters for the life you're actually living, and how to start listening. Because if you can't distinguish between the two, you might spend your whole life living someone else's story. Echoes versus voices, or voices versus echoes?
They both communicate the same thing, John.
Yeah, so we got to learn to distinguish between what's truly ours and what we would just ascribe from others.
Absorbed from others, not ascribed. Absorbed.
I need to get my eyes checked out.
Maybe.
I think so.
You are 40 now.
Yeah, I am 40, and even though I've had LASIK twice.
Twice?
Twice.
Was it a warranty? Did you get the second one a warranty?
Second one was a warranty.
Yeah.
It was a warranty thing. It's the first one started having double vision, and after probably about 5 years, I think it was, and I'm like, hey, I paid a lot of money for this. I'm gonna get it fixed. And so, knowing that our uncle is the man,
yeah,
he was able to get me in for a complimentary one, even though that the company that I originally had it done at has now shut their doors.
They shut the doors.
Yep.
Wow, why? They ran out of business.
I think they just got bought out and they just closed that branch. So,
wow, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. So echoes versus voices, learning to distinguish between what's truly ours and what we've absorbed from others.
Yeah, so to kind of talk about it, a good way to think about what I'm trying to communicate is to kind of imagine that you're standing in a canyon, and we've all done the echoing thing. There's a lot of double voices in my head, by the way, off the script. Maybe she can edit that out. I thought I could power through, but it's very distracting.
I think it's need to take out feedback. Is that better?
Yeah. Yep.
All right.
But now I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
No.
You could hear me before?
Yeah.
How about now?
I can hear you now.
Okay. But you can hear me in your headphones.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which means it's probably being picked up on my microphone, right?
Yes, but you don't have an omnidirectional. How about now?
Testing. Yeah, that's better. That's better.
Okay. So you should not. That's weird. So you can. Is that louder or is this louder?
They're about the same.
What about now?
The front's louder now.
But on that setting you can hear me.
What?
On this setting you can hear me though.
Yeah. You're in my headphones. Mm-hmm.
I don't understand that.
I don't either.
I don't get it.
Okay. This is better though.
Okay, good.
Anyway, what I was saying.
Voices versus echoes. All right. Let's start over. Voices versus echoes.
Yeah.
Learning to distinguish between what's truly ours and what we've absorbed. I almost said abolished. What we've absorbed from others. That's an interesting concept, Josh.
Yeah. So to introduce, I think a good analogy to kind of consider is to imagine yourself standing in the Grand Canyon, or in a canyon, not the Grand Canyon, but any canyon or valley or whatever, and you shout something into the distance, into the void, and then a moment later you hear it back. So obviously when that echo bounces back to us, it sounds very familiar, but it's not the same. Essentially your sounds gets bounced off the walls of the canyon, comes back to you, and while it sounds very familiar, it's not quite the same. And that's how our lives sometimes feel like. We're surrounded by echoes, which is not really our voice. I mean, it is in some ways, but it's a bounce back and a distortion, essentially. Mm-hmm. So we're surrounded by echoes, things like our, expectations from our family, cultural expectations, cultural narratives, advice, family patterns, family habits, personal habits, so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. But the real question then is, how do you know what's an echo and what's your true voice? Like, what's your true compass in life? And that's kind of why I thought it'd be important to talk about today.
So I imagine you're going to help us figure out what is
Maybe.
actually our values
try.
and what's our beliefs and what's just kind of
Well,
what's
it's more
being fed
about
to
not
us.
necessarily beliefs. Yeah, actually, you're on the right track. You're on the right
Yeah.
path there. Yep. So to define it, when I talk about echoes in this sense, I'm really talking about the external influences that sound like us but originate elsewhere. So if you can think of your own personal voice, that internal voice, as coming from inside you, an echo comes from outside of you, or it's an external noise, you might say.
Sure.
External static, if we're going to use our podcast name.
That's kind of agreeable with
Right.
what's going on internally.
Yeah, exactly. So here's some examples. So parental or cultural expectations, right? As parents, we all have expectation of our kids. We remember what our parents expect of us, whether it's getting good grades or pursuing a specific career or to be successful, or in some extreme cases, we've heard those stories of the parent expecting the kid to be in the family business, for example. And that's just kind of the unspoken expectation that they have.
Is that kind of what we're going to be doing with our kids?
Well, I don't think I am yet, because none of my kids have expressed any interest in being a part of the family business. But so that's an example of the parental expectations. Cultural expectations, what does it mean to behave or act as a man or as a woman, or the cultural expectations of having a successful career. And the American dream, so to speak, is we kind of have this ideal of an expectation that we have to be financially successful, relationally successful, and all these different things. And all those expectations are placed on us externally. There's also this idea, there's also this concept called societal scripts. And a script, in case you're wondering, is kind of a cultural thought process. So it's a way that we're, as people in a society or in a culture, are expected to think about things in a certain way. Mm-hmm. That's a societal script, and that's passed through generations and within a culture without us really knowing. It's just something that we pick up on. For example, in our culture, for example, when you meet someone, it's customary to shake their hands. No one ever's told you that you have to shake someone's hand. Maybe our parents did,
right?
But it's kind of expected to do that. For example,
sure. Right?
And then we have the more obvious examples of like authority figures or social media influences that shape our beliefs without us even realizing it. So we're exposed to their messages and their ideas, and those in turn shape our beliefs without us really noticing it or being aware of it in real time.
Sure.
The challenge, the echoes are very subtle, or these external influences are very subtle. They feel familiar, they feel safe, which makes it easy to mistake for what we believe is our own truth. And I'm not necessarily talking about, truth is unique to each person. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I am trying to say, though, is that sometimes when we allow others or these external echoes to influence who we are as individuals, sometimes we misinterpret their idea of what's important as actually our idea of what's important, which is not necessarily the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yep.
So it's important to keep in mind is that these external influences or these external echoes that are all around us all the time, they're not inherently bad, but they can become limiting if we don't recognize them.
Sure.
And acknowledge them for what they are. Does that kind of make sense?
Yep.
Are you tracking? Okay.
I'm tracking. I'm getting there.
So we kind of talked about what's an echo. It's important to know what am I referring to about our own internal voice.
Sure.
So if you remember when I talked about when I was comparing an echo to the external influences that we have in us or outside of us, whether it's from our parents, whether it's from our families, culture, society, what have you, religion is another one. Our voice then is kind of like our inner compass. Some people call it a conscience, perhaps. But the voice is kind of our inner sense of, well, who am I as a person, really? Internally,
Right.
What do I think of myself? What is my value? What are my values? What are my natural inclinations or my natural instincts? Or just what is my unique perspective on something? I think we've learned the past several years, probably past 10 years, that we kind of, and I'll get to this in a minute, we kind of assume external beliefs as our own. particularly in today's political climate,
Yeah,
for
that's a
example.
good
You know,
point.
we
Yep.
assume that we're a member of this group, whether it's political or religious or otherwise, and then we kind of psychologically swallow all of their ideas and make them our own, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's important to note that those external influences are then impacting how we interpret the world
Sure.
in general.
Right.
So kind of the traits of a true voice rather than an echo in this sense is they often feel quieter than echoes. Echoes, social, like, and for the terms of our conversation, social media influencers, authority figures, even political figures, those all sound really loud, right? Whereas our own internal voice is a lot quieter, a lot more subtle. And we actually have to spend a lot of time focusing on it to really kind of learn what it is.
Right.
That's why sometimes you hear people talk about trying to find themselves, you know, and that's really what they're talking about is what's my own internal compass? What's my own internal belief system? If you take away everything that's influencing me externally,
What's my personal true
inside,
north?
what's my personal true north? Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
So our internal voice, it's persistent. And so you know how there'll be times when you're pursuing something or you're doing something and the thing you're doing isn't necessarily bad or wrong, but it doesn't feel quite right. That's kind of our internal voice kind of nudging us. And kind of there's a incongruence between what our own internal voice is saying and what the external influences are trying to get us to do.
Do you think that people choose to take the echoes and assign them as to their own voice just because it's easier that way? They don't have to think. They don't have to really work at it.
I think there are situations where, we get...
Or like just following the crowd.
So look at modern society. You know, we have so many external influencing factors in our lives, so many external echoes that we're faced with, whether it's on social media, the 24-hour news cycle, text messaging. You know, just everything is so immediate and right now, and so everything is clamoring for our attention all the time.
Right.
Whereas if you look back 100 years ago, there was all this external influence, but it was kind of trickling in at a much slower pace.
Right.
Even look at during World War II, for example. People wouldn't tend, and historical buffs are going to kind of reprimand me on this one, but I'm probably going to say something somewhat inaccurate, but it would take a while for news of what was going on, at the campaign in Europe, for example, to reach the United States. Right. Whereas now it's instantaneous.
It's as it's happening.
It's live. And so all this stuff, the immediacy of information and the immediacy of communication that we have from the external world can be overwhelming, and it gets all very, very loud, psychologically speaking. And so because of that, it's much more difficult for us to ground ourselves in who are we as an individual, and how do I, knowing what my true north is, if we do know that, how am I interpreting what's going on around me rather than having what's going on around me interpret it for me? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, for sure.
So here's some other examples. We all, perhaps there's a college student who didn't really want to go to college, but they go anyway because everybody else is. That external echo is telling them that everyone is going to college, therefore you have to go as well.
And you're not going to make any money if you don't go to college.
Right.
If you're really serious about your future, you will do that. Well, hark. I would just
the pendulum's swinging the other way.
What's that?
I think the pendulum's swinging the other way.
It sure is. I mean, white collar. It's not. It's blue collar is making some pretty good bank right now, and
for sure. Yeah.
and honestly, most of the most successful people in the world were either college dropouts or never even went.
True. Very good point.
It's just the way it is. Entrepreneurs.
Another external echo, for example, in the workplace, may be that promotions matter. And
what was that?
Promotions matter.
Yeah.
And sure, do promotions matter? Yeah, from an external standpoint, yeah. But why are you pursuing that promotion, right? Is it because it brings your career to a different place of fulfillment for you personally? Or is it because you're pursuing this standard of increased salary, increased prestige, or recognition that comes along with a promotion? So sometimes an echo can say that a promotion matters above all else.
What do you think what do you think people in general seek promotions for? Do you think it's primarily just financial, or do you think it's status, or
I think it depends on the individual.
oh yeah,
You
it
know,
does.
The research is showing that younger generations actually they're finding that their work ethic, the most recent generation, I forget, is it Gen Z? No, it doesn't matter.
The new
But
generation or whatever.
the youngest generation entering the workforce actually has a very high work ethic. Millennials kind of get a bad rap for having a poor work ethic, but the most recent generation coming in has a very strong work ethic, but they value fulfillment over financial gain necessarily. So that's why you're kind of seeing a little bit of a shift is for someone to retain a high performer within an organization, they have to not only compensate them adequately, but even perhaps more important than that is to come alongside them and help them find what fulfills them in life as well.
Right.
So it's kind of both and, if that makes sense.
So it's no longer just sit down and do your job and it'll give you a paycheck. It's
right.
It's I think in
am
some
I doing meaningful work is what
right. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you're gonna be spending the majority of your time of your life, of your adult life doing something, you better find it fulfilling.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just killing your time.
Yeah. And the challenge is, like I mentioned before, if we allow it, echoes can very easily drown out that inner voice that we have, our internal compass. There's several reasons for that. There's a lot of psychological and social mechanisms that cause echoes to sound very loud to us. For example, there's something called the conformity bias, and what that means is it's our tendency as human beings. We all want to belong to a group. We're herd animals, I like to say.
Sure.
You know how a group of horses or cows, if there's a group of them, you're rarely going to see somebody one of them standing off by themselves. They're always going to be in a group.
Right.
Human beings are the same way. We're herd animals. We like being around others. We like belonging to a group. And so the conformity bias is saying that a lot of times our tendency will be to ignore or diminish our own internal belief system and take on the belief system of the group that we want to be in.
Sure.
And we do this all the time, because a lot of times we present a different version of ourselves based on the context,
Right.
The person that we may be at home is oftentimes different than the person we may be at work. And people that are the most fulfilled actually have integrity across all areas, meaning they're the same person at home that they are at work, right?
Are you the same person at home as you are at work? Or you have a little bit different?
I like to think so.
I know I'm different.
So. I think at home I just can probably be more of my true self and just kind of be more vulnerable with people.
Yeah.
Than I am at work.
I think as a leader, as a boss, I think that you do have to have, whether we agree with it or not, you almost have to have some sort of a I don't want to say a wall or something, but you just have to be, it's just different.
Yeah, I think what you're tapping into is when you are in a work setting or in any social setting, but work mainly, if you're having a bad day, everybody picks up on it and is perhaps annoyed by it or is impacted by it.
Right.
Whereas at home, certainly people are impacted by you having a bad mood, but the context is different and they're more accepting of you,
right.
And there's more security.
Yeah.
Not that you should turn your family into doormats, but at the end of the day, you know that they're going to, for the most part, accommodate your crabbiness, for example.
That's
right?
true.
So that's kind of the way I think about it. But another psychological mechanism that causes echoes to drown out our voices is the fear of rejection or failure. Human beings mostly, I'm speaking in a very general sense, we tend to we have a fear of rejection and we also have a fear of failure. And so we tend to do things to ensure that neither one of those two things happen, even if it's at the expense of who we are as individuals.
And most times that is at the expense of you and who you are, because what I've found is, for one, you cannot have success without failure.
True.
You can't.
Right.
And people who are afraid of failure, or who fear rejection, they are essentially giving all that control to someone else who doesn't even really impact
Right.
their life in any way, and they're forfeiting how good their life can be.
Right. Exactly.
And that's just I've done that. I know this because I've done that many times.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
And
wanting
the reason
approval.
the reason we have a fear of rejection is because we are very comforted by belonging. There's a comfort in belonging, and being part of a group and being an accepted member of that group. You think of a neighborhood, that you live in. Do you want to know what the most contagious thing in a neighborhood is?
Gossip.
Nope. Cutting the grass.
Oh yes,
If one person cuts the grass, it spreads like wildfire throughout the neighborhood. But that's my point, is you'll notice that as one person will start cutting their grass, and then eventually, within a few days, everybody has cut their grass, right?
Sometimes it's a symphony of lawnmowers on a nice day.
It's kind of funny, but nobody wants to be the person that has the unkept lawn, right?
Right.
Now, certainly, there's exceptions to that. We all have encountered the situation in which there's a neighbor that doesn't care, clearly.
Yes.
But there's that comfort in belonging. We don't want to be the person that sticks out. I had that scenario on Saturday, as my lawn was pretty long.
People giving you
And
dirty looks?
No, people weren't giving me dirty looks, but I saw everybody else cutting it, and I knew I had to do it, and I felt the pull to do it, but I couldn't because I'm having a cable buried and whatever. I couldn't do it yet. So, but I had there's that comfort, and you don't want to be rejected, and you don't want to stick out. You want to be part of that group.
You almost want to send out an announcement to your neighborhood, Facebook group. Hey guys, don't worry.
Yeah.
I know I need to mow my grass. I'm just waiting for a cable to be buried. Chill out.
And then you add on top of it technology. And I know we talk about technology a lot, but technology is an ingrained part of our lives. I mean, look at us sitting here right now. We have 4 screens in front of us. Well, 5 if you include the camera. Right?
Yeah.
So technology is it's the fiber of our society right now.
Yeah.
And you can't get away from it. But technology and social media, they amplify those echoes. And so if you scroll on Facebook, you scroll on Instagram, scroll on Twitter, the algorithms in those technologies, they reflect back what's already loud.
It's nothing but echoes.
Right. So if we've
Is that
all
what
been
you're trying to say?
Yeah, we've all been on Facebook, right? And you tap on an interesting news story or an interesting advertisement, and suddenly your entire feed is filled with similar things.
All that confirmation bias.
Because they're just trying to get you to continue clicking on things. And as soon as you start, like, oh, you like this and you like this. And so those algorithms or those technologies are designed to amplify those echoes and continuously reflect it back to you.
One little quick, I've been kind of getting into the exploring more of the AI gadgets and stuff, and that can enhance our workflow. So I ordered a little meeting device, recording device that's it's going to be shipped this week. It was on Kickstarter, and literally every single advertisement I see on Facebook
is for AI now.
Specifically Facebook is all on these different variations of very similar items also on Kickstarter. I'm like, and it frustrates me because because at first they're like, oh,
you missed out on the best one.
What's that?
You missed out on the best one.
I missed out on the best one.
Yeah.
The other one said this one has a little bit of a dial and a little bit of a gadget and looks cooler and it has whatever.
Yeah. Hey, that's kind of the knock against capitalism. Now, I'm not saying capitalism is bad. I support capitalism, but that is the knock against it. And the kind of the comparison is, I'll use two extremes. You have the United States, which is quite frankly the pinnacle of capitalism, right?
Right.
That's why we have in my opinion, this is my opinion, that's why we have the standard of living that we have, is because people are allowed to innovate and to get rewarded when they innovate, that kind of thing. You compare that with a place like North Korea. North Korea is the opposite of capitalism, right? It's a dictatorship. There is no advertising. What people will say is, people that have visited North Korea will say, it is so quiet there. And they're not saying that people don't talk. There's no external noise going on. So you drive down the street in the United States, in a city, you'll see advertisements everywhere. You look at New York City, Times Square, there's screens everywhere advertising all kinds of stuff. Like in North Korea, you don't see any of that. And so that's kind of the challenge is we're constantly being fed that stuff in our society, and it's can be very difficult to quiet it down, if that makes sense.
It's always stimulation overload.
Exactly.
For sure.
It's stimulation overload.
Big time.
Yep. So then the question is, that's great. We've talked about echoes. We've talked about our inner voice and why our inner voice is important. How do we distinguish between the two in real time? And that can be where the rubber really meets the road for a lot of us is in any given moment, how do we know? And the fact of the matter is, unless you've taken time and unless you've gone on a road of self-discovery to some extent, it's going to be very, very difficult to distinguish between what is your own inner voice and what's just noise, what's just an echo outside of you.
Sure.
So some questions that you may think about to ask in a moment is, would I still choose this path or would I still make this decision if nobody else was watching? That's kind of the litmus test that in my mind is, if nobody else cared, if nobody else knew what I was doing, is this what I would do?
Yeah.
And sometimes what we find is if we ask ourselves that question, we don't know how to answer it. And that's that when we have a hard time answering that, then we really are lost touch with who we are as individuals and what's important to us personally.
Yeah.
Another question you can ask is, does this feel energizing or draining? A lot of times if we are making decisions or responding or making choices based on external voices or echoes, that is very draining. Whereas if we stay true to who we are as individuals and we make choices based on what we feel is important and to use your term, what's our true north as individuals, that's actually energizing. Now, I'm not saying that those two are always in competition with each other or always opposites, but the driving force should be our internal voice rather than the external voice.
So
or external echo, I should say.
Yeah. So I often find myself almost avoiding doing some work. Let's say at work. I find myself avoiding doing things that are energizing because sometimes I feel like, oh, my work shouldn't be fun.
It's rather sadistical.
I don't know.
So you have to be suffering in order for it to be work.
I was just doing some research this morning about just doing some learning how to utilize AI a little bit better, or just doing some more. It was enjoyable research for me, and I really like doing that.
Yeah,
learning about that kind of stuff. I'm like, I'm enjoying this right now. I don't know if I should be doing this at work. I should probably doing this on my own time.
Yeah,
is that kind of. Or is that just different?
Well, that's the echo from our society that screams, if you're not stressed out, tired, and exhausted, you're clearly not working that hard, right? And that just makes absolutely no sense.
No, you should love what you're doing.
Right, you should. And I'm not saying that. Certainly there are situations in people are in life where they're dealt a more difficult hand and they have to do a job that they don't like. I think of our late uncle. He had a job that he hated for most of his life because he felt trapped because he had to be able to provide for his family at the time. A very intelligent man. But, so I'm not saying that if you're not working somewhere that you absolutely adore and love, therefore you have failed. But I'm just saying that can be true, but it can also be true that we've completely misconstrued work to mean something that we have to be exhausted all the time,
right,
in order for it to be worthwhile.
Yeah, good point.
Work can be difficult and fulfilling, is what I'm trying to assert here.
Absolutely.
Other questions you can ask is, am I making this decision from fear or desire? If you're making a decision based on fear, you're responding to an echo. You're responding to an external influence. If you make a decision out of desire or of an internal yearning to do what you know you're called to do in a situation, that's responding to your inner voice. And again, the key is you have to know what your inner voice is. If you've never given yourself an opportunity to do that, to develop who you are as a person, those questions are going to be very, very difficult to answer.
That's a really good point. Am I making this decision from fear or desire? And if you're making a decision based off of fear, more often than not, it's probably an external echo.
Most of the time. Yep.
That kind of makes you relook at that stuff a little bit.
Yeah. So then you're probably wondering, well, what if somebody hasn't taken time to develop their inner voice? What do you do then?
Start today.
Practically, well, but then how do you do it? What do you do? And the challenge with that
Yeah.
is you have to take time to get to know yourself. And I know this is sounding really, what's the term? Really,
Know
really,
thyself.
really Eastern. Yeah, it's really Eastern. But that's
Right.
that's really the fact. You need to know who you are as a person. You know, who, from my own standpoint, who am I? Who is Josh? Everything taken aside, who is he? Take away all his relationships, take away all the work, everything. Who is Josh? And that's can be oftentimes a very difficult thing to wrestle with. I think what I have found with my work with people is people avoid that. They avoid learning about who they are because of the fear that they won't like who they find.
Yeah.
And so that part of it takes a lot of work and a lot of intentionality. We call that, one of the concepts is introspection, which is thinking about thinking. And if we don't take time to think about who we are as people, we're always going to be responding just to echoes rather than what our own true north is.
Do you know thyself?
I think I'm on a journey to know who I am.
That's actually really hard because
Yeah.
because oftentimes people ask me, well, what do you think, or what do you want, whatever. I'm being very vague because I can't really give a good answer. A lot of times I'll just kind of have like a blank, like,
Yeah.
well, I don't know what I want.
Yeah.
What do you want? And then I'll be able to bounce off of that. So I guess in many cases, whenever I'm in those type of a
See, I would argue though what you just said there was a good example, and I would argue that your response to that hypothetical situation is based on fear because you don't want to be rejected by the person.
yeah,
It's kind of
I agree.
I was talking to our brother Jesse this morning, and we were talking about pulling the dachshund at the cabin. Doesn't matter. And I said, so does this day work for you? Does this day or this day work for you, Friday or Saturday? And he goes, either one is fine. What works for you? I'm like, I don't care. What works for you? And I said, this is a parallel, Jesse, to when we ask our wives where we want to go out to eat. Where do you want to go out to eat? I don't know. Wherever you want to go. And so it's kind of, my point is,
But make sure you choose the right one.
right. But my point is, when we respond in that way, and I'm jesting, but when we tend to defer to others, it's more based out of trying to feel them out, to not upset them, and to make sure that what you're about to say is in a relative alignment with what they're thinking. Well, that's fear of being rejected.
Yeah.
It's fear of having an incongruent thought pattern,
Right.
which is not really rooted. I mean, at the end of the day, who cares where you go out to eat, right? Doesn't matter. But that's just kind of an example of what we wrestle with on a daily basis. Now, if you take that up a notch, John, what do you think about having higher taxes for the rich, right? So if you're depending on the situation you're in,
Right.
you'll answer that very differently.
Right.
If you're with like-minded people, you will that believe the same way you do. You'll go full on with your belief with that one way or the other, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you're in a setting where you're not really sure what everybody thinks, you're going to temper your response because you don't want to necessarily have rejection. You don't want to deal with the consequences of voicing your true inner opinion. Does that make sense?
That's a good point because you know me, Josh. I can be I enjoy
Healthy debate.
a healthy debate.
Or a healthy assertion of your belief system.
Exactly. I am very much into politics and knowing what's going on, and
Sure. Yeah.
and I've noticed that. But I also feel like maybe this is kind of just me being courteous or careful, that I don't really truly speak my mind especially when it comes to some divisive things like politics.
Sure.
Until it's like the people I talk with, they kind of all like put out their little feelers a little bit, just very
little
gently. Like then we start with something.
So, how about that referendum?
Yeah,
So-
I was just like something really innocent, or like, did you hear what happened to Charlie Kirk,
right.
or whatever, and then gauging on how they respond to that, I completely adjust how I behave, because if I believe Charlie was a very good man.
Sure.
And a lot of people believe that he's
Not.
not. Yeah. And so I'm not really interested in getting in arguments or fights about it. But if I'm like, if I know someone who doesn't really care for him, then I just back off on
Right.
what or anything really.
Yeah, and I'm not advocating.
But then
I'm not advocating for people to be adversarial, all the time in communicating. But what I am saying is just to be aware of who you're presenting as yourself in a given situation. Is it rooted in who you are as a person, or is it rooted in who you think everybody else thinks you are or wants you to be? That's really what I'm getting at.
Maybe we should all be more just stick to our true selves and rip off that Band-Aid and I don't know.
Well, it doesn't help that in our culture, a lot of times we're looking to be offended too. But that's a whole other conversation. But anyway, so kind of getting back to the question is, how do you find your inner self? How do you find your inner voice? The practical way to do about it, and I'm, obviously, as you know, I'm a big journaler. Take time to journal your thoughts. Journal. Self-exploration is an excellent. Journaling is an excellent venue for self-exploration. And there's some people that, and I'm one of these individuals, like going on that self-discovery through writing it down or even a voice journal is very, very difficult. I'm a very reserved person. And so even going through that exercise is very challenging because it forces you to wrestle with yourself and to reckon with who you are individually. So you have everything, all your devices shut off, all external noises shut off, and you're sitting there with just you and yourself and a pen and a piece of paper, or you and a voice recorder, and you're recording your own inner thoughts. That can be a very daunting and intimidating
and sometimes really
activity.
Dark too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
very dark.
There's a dark side to all of us. Yeah,
right.
Other exercises you can do is just practice being with yourself in silence and in solitude. And when you allow yourself to be silent for an extended period of time with no noise, and by noise I mean no, not consuming any sort of messages or media or anything, just sitting in silence for an extended period of time can be very eye-opening, because it's amazing how your brain will start to generate thoughts, generate ideas on its own.
Boredom is so important.
It is important, yeah.
For children, at least.
And we don't know how to be bored anymore.
Right.
So some warning signs that you're stuck in echoes or stuck with only responding to external noises or voices is that you're constantly second-guessing your own decisions. If you're constantly second-guessing yourself, it's not that what you're doing is wrong. It's that perhaps it could be what you're doing is incongruent with who you are as a person. And if there's incongruence between what you're doing and what your own internal sense of self is, you're going to be constantly second-guessing what you're doing, whether it's at work, whether it's at home, whether it's whatever you're doing.
Right.
And another warning sign is that you experience a lack of fulfillment, even if you're, quote, successful. So good for you for making $2 million a year. But if you're not fulfilled, well, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
I thought money meant fulfillment. That's not true.
Right.
People have said that money doesn't solve problems, but I'm sure going to try. Right.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
Most people will say, and it's easier to look back and say, yeah, money isn't fulfilling for people that have gotten there. But it does hold true, is you can make all the money in the world and be, quote, successful, but also lack fulfillment if what your mission in life, if what you're doing with your life doesn't match your internal voice or internal mission, you're not going to be fulfilled.
Good point.
But I do want to end with this, and we've been talking about this as if echoes and voices are both completely separate and should be kept separate all the time. That's simply not true. Not all echoes are bad, and so before we leave by saying that to ignore all the echoes in our lives or the external influences in our lives, that's not what I'm saying. A lot of those external echoes, they do hold wisdom, but the key is kind of discerning what resonates, So, for example, we all have echoes from mentors in our lives. Mm-hmm. I have very key mentors in my life that have grounded me with who I am as a person and in my career and so forth. And then we also have, for example, another example of an echo is traditions that help provide grounding. Obvious traditions that we have in our culture are Christmas traditions, for example. those are external influences. They're not necessarily bad.
Right.
They're just they help ground us if they're taken in the right context.
Right.
The art, though, comes in when you're integrating those things, is keeping what aligns with your internal voice, your inner voice, and then discarding what doesn't. And that takes that takes a sense of, or the ability to examine what's influencing you and what doesn't align, and what if it is influencing you, does it align with your inner voice or your inner sense of purpose?
Mm-hmm.
So, closing, because I've been on a soapbox for a while now, according to the timer.
About 40 minutes.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Just keep in mind that if you're wanting to distinguish between what's an echo and what's a voice, echoes will fade, but your voice, once recognized, will be consistent. If you know who you are as a person, that will stay steady. If you're grounded with who you are as a person, and you know yourself, so to speak, to use what we said before, that will stay consistent with you. And then you can use that to kind of compare all these different echoes that you face. So I'll just leave with this. I'll end with this question: when was the last time you realized you were living somebody else's story instead of your own? Because that's really what an echo is living somebody else's story rather than your own.
It's a pretty loaded one to end up on.
Yeah.
To land on.
Yep.
That's good homework for all of us.
Go journal it, John.
Oh,
there you go.
that's been a while.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Non-Static Podcast. If you want to keep the conversation going, sign up for the Non-Static newsletter at nonstatic.org. And if you or someone you care about is struggling with their mental health, you can connect with us anytime at Inspire Services at inspireservicesllc.com. Take care, keep moving forward, and as always, enjoy the journey.